a lot of fans, Tash, a lot of selfies, a lot of love, saying, we still love you, Meghan, we still love you, Harry, taking selfies, look after yourself. I did hear that a lot as well, but they were very chipper, they took time with everyone, and it was just a great morning for them all.
Absolutely, and what a lovely day there on Sydney Harbour, Sam.
We did hear a little whisper that Harry and Meghan might be here this morning, so we thought we'd come down and check it out.
I'm very excited.
And before a single word is spoken, you already feel it. Not the forced kind of excitement that PR teams try to manufacture, not the awkward, polite applause that fades the second the camera's cut. This is different. This is loud, emotional, and very real. Voices cutting through the air in Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra. People shouting, "We love you, Meghan. We love you, Harry." Like they've been waiting for this moment and no headline is going to gaslight them out of it. And right there, in that raw, unfiltered energy, the entire narrative that's been pushed for years starts to wobble. Because reality has a funny way of refusing to cooperate with fiction. For 4 days, Australia didn't just receive Prince Harry and Meghan, it embraced them fully, publicly, loudly. And honestly, you can almost picture certain UK outlets refreshing their comment sections in panic, wondering why the script they've been clinging to is suddenly falling apart in real time. Because let's be very clear about something. Crowds don't lie. You can spin a headline, you can crop a photo, you can bring in a royal expert who hasn't been relevant since dial-up internet, but you cannot fake thousands of people showing up across multiple cities day after day with genuine excitement written all over their faces. Sydney showed up, Melbourne showed up, Canberra showed up, not in a half-hearted, we're here because it's on the schedule way. They showed up like something meaningful was happening, like they were witnessing people they actually connect with. And that connection, that's what makes this so uncomfortable for the critics. Because it's not built on titles, it's not built on hierarchy, it's built on something much harder to control: relatability, warmth, and the ability to make people feel seen. And every time Meghan smiles at someone in the crowd, every time Harry leans in to have a genuine conversation, you can see it landing. You can see people reacting in real time, not because they were told to, but because it feels real. Now, let's talk about the media presence in Australia, because this part is almost comical. The reporters aren't standing there with that stiff, suspicious energy we've all come to expect from certain corners of the press. They're smiling. They're engaged. Some of them look like they can't believe how positive the atmosphere is. It's like they accidentally walked into a story that isn't dripping in negativity, and now they don't quite know what to do with themselves. You can almost hear the internal dialogue. Wait, we're just covering people being liked? Is that allowed? And the answer, surprisingly, is yes, it is allowed. It's just been out of fashion in certain media circles for a while. As the visit unfolds, each day builds on the last. It's not a one-off burst of enthusiasm that fades overnight. It's consistent. It grows. More people show up, more voices join in. The energy doesn't dip, it amplifies. Which again is deeply inconvenient if your entire business model relies on convincing the world that these two are somehow unwanted. Because if that were true, where are the empty streets? Where are the indifferent faces? Where is the so-called lack of support we've been hearing about for years? Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Instead, what you get are moments that feel spontaneous and human. People reaching out, conversations happening naturally, laughter, that kind of easy, unforced interaction that you cannot script even if you tried. And then we arrive at the final day, Bondi, the kind of place that doesn't do fake energy, the kind of place where people will absolutely ignore you if you're not worth their time. And yet, there they are. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex stepping into Bondi Surf Bathers Life-Saving Club, and the crowd is already there, waiting, watching, cheering, not drifting in and out, not bored, fully present. That matters more than any headline ever will. Because when people wait for you, when they choose to stay just to catch a glimpse, that's not obligation, that's interest, that's appreciation, that's connection. And the cheers, not polite, not restrained, full, loud, unapologetic support. Now, somewhere, you just know there's a headline being drafted that says something like modest or controlled enthusiasm, because reality clearly needs a translator in those offices. But the footage tells a different story. It always does. Now, let's pause on that for a second, because what we're witnessing here isn't just a successful visit. It's a direct contradiction to years of narrative building, years of trying to convince people that Harry and Meghan are isolated, disliked, irrelevant. And yet, here they are, thousands of miles away, being greeted like, well, like people who matter. That's the part that stings, because it exposes the gap between what's being reported and what's actually happening. And once people start noticing that gap, it becomes harder and harder to maintain the illusion. Now let's talk about one of those small but powerful moments that tends to fly under the radar but actually says everything. During this visit, Joel van der Zwaan steps forward. Not as a random attendee, not as someone chasing a photo, but as someone connected to something deeply meaningful in Harry's life, the Invictus Games. For anyone paying attention, that connection matters. It's not superficial, it's not performative, it's built on shared experiences, resilience, and community. And what does Joel do? He presents Prince Harry and Meghan with a pair of personalized flip-flops. Now, on paper, that might sound simple, almost trivial. Flip-flops, really? But context changes everything. Because this isn't about the item itself, it's about what it represents. It's about someone from the Invictus community showing appreciation in a way that's personal, thoughtful, and completely genuine. No grand speeches, no over-the-top ceremony, just a quiet, human moment of connection. And honestly, those are the moments that tend to stick, the ones that don't feel staged, the ones that don't scream for attention, but somehow end up meaning the most. You can see the reaction, you can feel the sincerity, and for a brief second, all the noise fades away. No headlines, no commentary, just people interacting in a way that feels normal, which ironically is exactly what makes it so powerful. As the 4-day visit comes to an end, there's a sense of closure, but not in a rushed or abrupt way. It feels complete, like something meaningful has been shared and acknowledged. And let's be honest, not every visit leaves that kind of impression. Some come and go without much impact. This wasn't one of those. This one built momentum. It created moments. It sparked reactions that didn't feel forced. And most importantly, it reminded people of something very simple. Connection matters more than narrative. You can attempt to rewrite public perception from a distance. You can flood the space with commentary, speculation, and carefully chosen words. But when people experience something firsthand, when they see, hear, and feel it for themselves, that experience tends to outweigh whatever they've been told. Australia didn't just hear about Harry and Meghan, they saw them, they interacted with them, they responded in real time, and the response was clear. Support, warmth, excitement. Not hidden, not subtle, very, very visible. Now here's the part that really lingers. If this level of reception can happen across multiple cities, across multiple days, with consistent energy and enthusiasm, then what does that say about the broader narrative we've been fed? It doesn't exactly strengthen it. In fact, it raises questions, big ones. Questions about credibility, about intention, about why there's such a disconnect between what's reported and what's experienced. And once those questions start forming, they don't just disappear. They grow. They spread. They make people look a little closer, think a little harder and maybe, just maybe, stop taking everything at face value. What's been happening over these 4 days isn't just a successful visit. That phrase is too small, too neat, too polite for what's actually unfolding. This feels like a slow, very public undoing of a story that's been aggressively pushed for years. Because every time Harry and Meghan step out and the crowd responds the way it has, it chips away at that carefully constructed illusion that nobody cares. And the thing is, people aren't just showing up, they're reacting. There's a difference. Showing up can be curiosity. Reaction is emotion. And Australia has been running on emotion this entire time. You see it in the way people lean forward, phones half forgotten because they're actually trying to take in the moment instead of just recording it. You hear it in the tone of the cheers, not the polite, distant kind. These are loud, almost protective, like people feel personally invested in them being there and being treated well.
Which, if you think about it, is exactly the opposite of what certain outlets have been insisting. Because if the narrative were true, if the public had truly moved on or lost interest, you wouldn't get this consistency. Maybe one city would show up out of curiosity, maybe a small crowd here or there, but 3 major cities, multiple days, and the same energy? That's not a fluke. That's a pattern. And patterns are very inconvenient when they contradict the storyline. There's also something else happening beneath the surface that's easy to miss if you're only focused on the big moments. It's the smaller interactions, the quick exchanges, the smiles that linger just a second longer than expected, the way Harry still has that instinct to connect directly, to make eye contact, to joke, to break whatever invisible barrier people think should exist. And Meghan? There's a calm confidence there. Not performative, not exaggerated, just steady. She doesn't look like someone trying to prove anything anymore. And ironically, that's probably what unsettles critics the most, because when someone stops reacting to the noise starts to look a little ridiculous on its own. You can almost sense the frustration building in certain corners, because what do you do when your usual talking points stop landing, when the audience you've been speaking to starts seeing something different with their own eyes? You double down, you nitpick harder, you zoom in on irrelevant details and pretend they're significant. What was she wearing? Why did he stand like that? It becomes this desperate scavenger hunt for something, anything that can be framed negatively. Meanwhile, outside of that bubble, people are just enjoying the moment. And that's the part that really throws everything off balance. Because indifference would be easier to spin. Hostility, even better. But genuine warmth? That's harder to twist without looking a little unhinged. Take Melbourne, for example. The atmosphere there didn't feel staged or overly managed. It felt loose, open, like people were comfortable expressing themselves. And they did. Loudly. There's something about that city's energy that doesn't tolerate forced narratives very well. It either connects or it doesn't. And in this case, it clearly did. Then Canberra comes in with its own kind of reception. A bit more structured, sure, but no less genuine. Different cities, different vibes, same underlying reaction. That consistency keeps showing up like an unwanted fact in a story that was supposed to go a completely different way. And Sydney? Sydney just decided to be Sydney. Big, expressive, impossible to ignore. The kind of place where if something's happening, you're going to feel it whether you like it or not. And people felt this. You also can't ignore the timing of all this. In an era where public figures are constantly being scrutinized, dissected, and dragged through endless cycles of commentary, maintaining this kind of positive reception isn't easy. One wrong move, one awkward moment, and it gets amplified instantly. But that didn't happen here. Instead, what you get is a steady stream of moments that reinforce a very different image. Not perfect, not polished to the point of being robotic, but human, approachable, real in a way that doesn't feel like it's been focus grouped into existence. And here's the uncomfortable truth that keeps peeking through all of this.
People respond to authenticity. They might argue about it online, they might get pulled into debates, but when they're standing there in real life, watching someone interact without that rigid, rehearsed energy, they know the difference. That's what's been happening across Australia. People recognizing something that feels genuine and reacting accordingly. Now let's talk about the crowd behavior itself, because this part is actually fascinating if you step back and look at it. There's a kind of protective enthusiasm in the way people respond to Harry and Meghan. It's not just admiration, it's almost like people feel the need to counterbalance the negativity they've seen elsewhere. You hear it in the volume, in the repetition of those phrases. We love you, Meghan. We love you, Harry. It's not a one-off shout. It's repeated, reinforced, like people want to make absolutely sure it's heard. And maybe that's exactly what it is, a reaction to everything they've seen, everything they've read, everything that hasn't quite matched what they're witnessing in front of them. Because when reality and narrative clash, people tend to pick a side. And right now, in these moments, the side they're picking is very clear. Even the pacing of the visit plays into this. It's not rushed, it's not overloaded to the point where everything blurs together. There's space for interaction, space for those unscripted moments that can't be predicted or controlled. And those moments, they're gold, not in a flashy, headline-grabbing way, but in a subtle, lasting way, the kind that sticks with people long after the cameras are gone. You can imagine someone going home after one of these appearances, replaying a small interaction in their mind. He actually stopped and spoke to me. She smiled and acknowledged us. It sounds simple, but those are the moments that build loyalty, not press releases, not curated statements, actual human interaction. And that's something that's been noticeably consistent throughout this trip. There's also a level of ease between Harry and Meghan themselves that's hard to fake. The way they move together, the way they share moments, it doesn't feel staged. It feels lived in, comfortable. And that kind of dynamic tends to translate well in public because it's not trying too hard. People pick up on that, even if they can't articulate it. Which brings us back to the media narrative, because it's impossible to ignore how out of sync it feels with everything happening on the ground. It's like watching two completely different stories unfold at the same time. One is loud, visible, full of energy and support. The other is trying very hard to pretend the first one doesn't exist. And the longer that gap remains, the harder it becomes to maintain credibility. Because eventually, people start asking themselves a very simple question. If what I'm seeing doesn't match what I'm being told, which one do I trust? That question alone is enough to shake things up. And then you add moments like the Invictus connection, like Joel stepping forward with that thoughtful gift, and it reinforces something deeper. This isn't just about appearances or public perception. There are real relationships here, real communities that continue to show up and support in ways that don't rely on headlines. That continuity matters. It shows that what Harry built with Invictus didn't just fade away. It's still there, still strong, still meaningful. And when those connections surface during moments like this, it adds another layer to the entire visit. It grounds it. It reminds people that beyond all the noise, there's substance. And substance is a lot harder to dismiss than a headline. So as all these moments stack up, day after day, city after city, what you're left with is something that feels undeniable. Not perfect, not immune to criticism, but undeniably impactful. And that's the part that's going to linger long after the visit ends. Not the headlines, not the commentary, but the memory of what people actually saw and felt in those moments. So, as the Sussexes wrap up their 4-day visit to Australia, leaving behind crowds that clearly didn't want them to go just yet, there's a bigger takeaway here. This wasn't just a series of appearances. It was a reminder. A reminder that public perception isn't as easily controlled as some would like to believe. A reminder that genuine connection can't be manufactured or dismissed with a headline. And a reminder that when people feel something is real, they respond to it loudly. And if that response doesn't match the narrative, well, that's not the public's problem. That's a media problem. And judging by everything we've just seen, it's one they're still trying to figure out how to fix. Thank you for watching. Good Friday, and take care.